So I would like to introduce Ari Neumann, the Chief Impact and Policy Officer at RCAC. He's an advocate for environmental justice and rural community development. Before stepping into his current role, Ari led RCAC's community and environmental services team, driving impactful programs for drinking water, waste management, and economic growth. Under his leadership, RCAC launched coaching services for rural small businesses and helped communities secure critical infrastructure funding. Ari's journey has taken him from shaping national strategies at the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, also known as RCAP, in Desi, to championing environmental policy on state and federal levels. He holds degrees from Stanford and the University of Washington School of Law, and his expertise is backed by affiliations with groups like the Green Law Environmental Law Society and California Climate Justice Working Group. Ari's work proves he's not just about creating policy, he's about creating lasting impact where it's needed most. And if you don't believe me that he is about doing good in the world, I wanted to share this lovely video of him helping an old lady cross the street. That was it.
Saw that coming, Shannon. I saw that coming. I knew
you saw that coming. Okay. So that was Salt Lake City last week, and I would like to introduce you to Ari Neumann.
Wow, thanks, Shannon. I don't know how to follow up that introduction, to be honest.
Shannon,
it's nice
you
to be
want to
here.
stop sharing your screen so that we can see Ari?
Yep. Okay, there we go.
Not in Inception way.
Yes. All right, there we go. So you can blame Lindsay for making that video available to me, but
Oops.
oops, yep. So thanks for joining us today, Ari. I have a few questions teed up since we have, since I've introduced you. Thought that I would ask a couple of questions and get you started, and then see if we have questions from the Threshold team.
Sounds good.
My first question is, we've talked a little bit about your background in the introduction. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your background, and what initially inspired you to pursue the path that you're on?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I like to think of myself as a recovering attorney. After college, I went to Washington, D.C., and I had these ambitions. I was going to save the world and save the environment and stop climate change. And went and worked there for a while. And my boss at the time told me, well, you're doing great work, but if you really want to move up this organization, you have to get a law degree. So I went to law school. And then I graduated in the height of the recession in 2010 when nobody was hiring lawyers, and was sort of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I moved back from Seattle to DC and thought, I'll find something, and sort of took that leap of faith, I guess, and managed to actually find my first real job in a physical newspaper, which doesn't happen anymore. Saw the ad for RCAP, the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, and I thought, I'm from a rural place. I care about drinking water. I can put these skills to use. And the rest is history, I guess, as they say. So I actually feel very fortunate to have kind of fallen into that opportunity and not gone and done the traditional legal route. And I do maintain my bar association membership, but I have never set foot in a courtroom since I swore in, and I hope to never have to again.
Nice.
But love the work and really, I grew up in a town of 800 people in northern Idaho, and when I was a kid, there were times when we weren't able to drink the drinking water in town. It had pollution in it. It was a farming community, and it just so happened to coincide that, after the heavy fertilizer and spraying season, the drinking water was always contaminated. And no one wanted to put two and two together, that one might be causing the other. But by late summer every year, we were often, trying to supplement drinking water from another source. And, for most of us, and I find myself guilty of this even to this day, we turn on the tap and water comes out and we don't think about it. We flush the toilet, wastewater disappears and we don't think about it. But as I got into this work early on in DC, it became really evident that, sure, we have if you look at census data, 99% of people have drinking water, wastewater in their homes. But think about the flip side of that. That means 3 million people in this country don't. And, we really are intensely focused on those 3 million people. And even if you have water coming to your house, much like my childhood home, there are times when you couldn't drink it. And so we want to make sure that people not only have access to water, but that the water they have is water they can drink and water they can afford. And, the more I've done it and the more opportunity I've gotten to travel around the country and visit the places where we're working, it just sort of reinvigorates that motivation for me to keep going and to know that there are folks still to be reached, and we are doing our best to reach everyone, reach all those people.
Hey, thanks for that. Would you mind talking us through a specific project or initiative that you've led that you feel has had a lasting impact?
Sure. Can I tell two?
Yeah, tell two.
So I have my two favorite stories. Okay, so the first one was actually at my old job when I was at RCAC. And there was a woman named Desi in New Augusta, Mississippi. And Desi was a 73-year-old woman when we first started working with her. And she lived in the same house that her parents had. And when she was born, they had no electricity, no road to the house, no running water, no sewer, no telephone. And this was about 2014. And she was telling us the story of growing up in this place. And when she was a kid around World War II, they were just building the drinking water system for town. It was actually prisoners of war from World War II that were held at Camp Shelby in Alabama who came over and built the infrastructure in this town. And so they had, running water in town, but not at her house. Her house was sort of on the outskirts of town. And over the course of her life, they got electricity through the Rural Electrification Act in the 70s. Eventually, they got a paved road out to their house. It's now a 4-lane highway. And they got telephone in the 1980s run to their house. Prior to that, they did not have access to telephone. And then she got drinking water in the early 2000s running to her house. And we were working with her on wastewater. And I'll never forget when she said, "When y'all finally get wastewater to our house, I will be a modern lady." And that's always stuck with me because 2 years later, we did finally get wastewater service to her house. And she, was able to be a modern lady at age 75, which was really a pretty incredible story of just the transition in that one lifetime from having no service to what she considered modern. Now, she still didn't have internet, but, I'll take it if she thought of herself as a modern lady. So that one was huge. And then, more recently here at RCAC, we started an initiative. Actually, it started shortly before I came to RCAC called Aqua for All. And it was really the California Endowment big foundation came to us and said, we've got all these kids in all these schools who are drinking sugar-sweetened beverages, sodas, you name it. And we wanted, from a public health standpoint, we really want to reduce the incidence of childhood diabetes here, and particularly in the San Joaquin Valley, the Central Valley of California. And they said, what we're finding is these kids don't have an alternative. There's no safe water to drink. So what are they doing? They're turning to the vending machine at the school and buying a Coke or a Gatorade or whatever. And so the California Endowment said, let's fix this problem, and here's some money, go solve it. And particularly starting this community of Arvin, which is outside of Bakersfield. And so my team got together and we said, okay, what are we going to do? How do we get kids to drink water? And the team actually came up with this really a multifaceted solution, but where kids want drinking water or need water, so at school, when they're at the library, when they're at the playground, all those places, we actually put filtration units in the drinking fountains, as well as those bottle fillers. Like if you've ever flown to the airport, you can fill up your water bottle to make sure that kids can get safe drinking water, even if they don't have it at home. And Nalgene partnered with us, and they donated a whole bunch of bottles so that the kids had, the big bottles they could fill up and take that drinking water home at night. And in addition to that, we actually did a bunch of outreach and education, trying to sort of change behavior. And actually, University of San Francisco did some follow-up research that actually indicated a significant change in behavior, that kids were consuming twice as much water as before. And that we kind of created this culture around it's okay to drink the water now because it's filtered, even though this town had had unsafe water for decades. And that really created a huge shift for that community. And then we started to hear from all these other communities all around the state. And they're like, hey, we want that too. And it eventually got to the point where, philanthropically, we weren't able to meet all the demand across the state. And so we went to the state legislature and said, hey, like, there's this real problem, even in a state as wealthy as California, that there are lots of kids at schools who don't have access to safe water when they're at school. And the state legislature actually has, for the last 7 years now, been running a program or authorized and funded a program to make sure that kids have access to safe drinking water at school. So there are now hundreds of schools around the state of California that have, some of them had no drinking fountains at all before, or they were so old and gross. I think about the ones at my elementary school. I wouldn't have wanted to drink out of them. And so we've been able to replace them all around the state, both urban and rural. I mean, this is one where our focus is more on rural, but we've actually done some urban work too. And just ensuring that where kids want to drink water, where kids are, where they need water, that the water they're going to have there is safe to drink. And so it's been a huge success. We've seen other partner organizations developing similar initiatives all around the country. We'd love to expand to our other states because we serve the 13 Western states. But we've seen, Virginia, Missouri, a bunch of other states have done similar things to our Aqua for All program. And really, it all kind of started with just a nudge and some money from the California endowment to like, hey, let's fix this problem. And it's really turned out to, I think, fundamentally change the way a lot of kids see their relationship with drinking water and understanding the value of drinking water as opposed to, drinks that have more adverse health impact.
Great. Let's see. How about looking back at your journey? Is there a particular moment or a particular experience that stands out as a turning point in your...
Well,
aside from deciding not to be a practicing
yeah,
lawyer.
that was a good one. No, I think one of the sort of the early... Well, one of the things that didn't seem great at the time but actually turned into a great one is the reason I came to RCAC. Actually, so when I was at RCAP, I was in Desi and I got put in charge. It was not my job, but I got put in charge of a technology overhaul project, actually. And so all of a sudden I find myself as a project manager on a giant database redesign that this was 2015 and it had not been updated since 2001. So that gives you a sense of the technology we were working with. And I did it and we did it and we're still... I know Shannon and the team working with us they're still seeing this, the use of some of that database.
Is this DCS?
This is DCS.
Okay.
Yes. So I got put in, it was a year-long project to overhaul the system. It was a very valuable exercise and I'm glad we did it. It was one of those, like, I felt really far away from the work being in DC and sort of focusing on building the database and having the meetings to talk about the stuff, but not actually doing the work. And so when the opportunity came at RCAC to move out here to Sacramento and really get a lot closer to the ground and a lot closer to the work, it was a huge jump. My wife was from the DC area. I had to convince her that it was going to be okay to move across the country. We had a 2-year-old at the time. So it was a huge leap of faith again for us a little bit, but coming out here and sort of getting my hands dirty a little bit and actually getting back into the communities to do the work was really, again, sort of rekindled that spark of like, this is why we're doing it. And I actually still make it a point every year. I do at least a couple of visits in community just to make sure that I'm always sort of grounded in like the reality of our work on the ground. I know a lot of you are from Puerto Rico, and I actually got a chance just a few years ago, last year, I guess it was, last January, to visit down near Ponce. There's a landfill that people were taking their debris from Hurricane Maria, and the landfill started charging people to dispose of it. And so people just started dumping it in the jungle outside the landfill instead of in. And we don't do a whole lot of solid waste work, but it was sort of like, as we're learning how to help communities recover from natural disasters, like here's a situation of lesson learned the hard way of what we don't want to do, and make sure that folks have access to landfill. And so, those kind of opportunities to really see the impact on the ground are the thing that just sort of always rekindles that for me.
Thank you. What do you see as next for you? What are your hopes and dreams and goals for the future of RCAC and the work that you're doing there?
Well, we're going to build the CRM.
Yeah, you better say that.
Yeah, I think we're at a really interesting sort of point as an organization. So we are about, depending on the day, 60 to 70% funded by federal and state government. And as anyone who's not living under a rock knows, right, times for a federally funded nonprofit they've been super challenging lately. A lot of unclear communication coming out of our funders in DC. A lot of states looking at a tough budget situation, whether, because of the stock market fluctuations or whatever the case may be. So I'm just getting a news alert that the markets are plummeting because of trade war intensifying. So all those things are having an impact on these state and federal budgets. And as folks are trying to decide what are we going to fund next, one of the things we're really trying to do is remind people in government agencies and in legislatures that these are not negotiable. Like, everyone has to have access to drinking water. We literally have to have it to live. Wastewater sanitation is essential for public health. These are the basics. If we can't continue to ensure that people are getting access to the basics, then all the economic growth, anything else you want to talk about, you have to have that underground infrastructure in first and build up from there. So I think that's causing us to rethink a little bit, like, what is our reliance on government funding? Is that secure? And we're having frank conversations with foundations about what role do you want to have in playing this going forward, and how do we ensure not only that RCAC is put in a position to thrive, but that a lot of our local partner organizations, because in some of these small communities, it's that local nonprofit who knows the people in town, and they're the ones that are really the trusted partner in the community. And if those nonprofits go away because they lose their government funding, trying to get anything done in those communities is going to be super challenging. And similarly, like tribal governments, we do a lot of work with indigenous communities, and as those tribal governments are, again, often heavily reliant on federal funding. And if those federal funds go away, a lot of, it's not even at that point about progress for those communities. It's about how do we hold on to, what we've got in these places. And so really trying to convey the message out to folks that we need this whole infrastructure of support to support communities. And it's a really critical juncture, I think, for philanthropy to jump in and say, we want to keep a robust nonprofit sector alive to make sure we're able to deliver these services in communities. So I say that with a dose of optimism. Like, we've had a great response so far from philanthropy to say, we want to invest and we want to keep this sort of thriving network of nonprofits focused on rural community development. And we saw them come off the sidelines during COVID and really invest heavily in keeping things going for a lot of nonprofits. And I sincerely hope and believe that they will find ways to support the nonprofit sector going forward. And so I think, obviously that's not what I had hoped and dreamed of a year ago. But I am finding renewed sense of optimism that, with philanthropic partners, continuing to work with our government partners and our elected officials to just remind them of the value of this we are starting to see, I think, some pulling back from the initial, oh yeah, all this stuff's got to go, to instead be oh, okay, I can see the value, and personifying it with those stories of these are actual human beings that are getting drinking water or wastewater or, whatever the case may be. And, I think just reminding people these are not just line items in a budget, but they actually affect people has been really effective so far.
Thank you. We love a good story at Threshold. We're good storytellers. A much more pointed question. You've talked about this a little bit, but how do you see the role of technology evolving in the field of environmental justice and community development, aside from your brand spanking new CRM system?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild when I think about, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but I still remember when dial-up first came to town, and, that awful sound and logging onto Netscape. I think about it, it used to be that the speed of information was very slow. And especially in rural areas, ran into each other at the grocery store and you caught up with someone, and that was kind of how you found out what was going on, and you were super reliant on your local newspaper often. And what we're seeing now is, whether it's through social media or other forms, like people are a lot more connected in some ways in their communities, but also a lot more disconnected physically in their communities. And I think it fundamentally changes sort of, when a lot of times like a local elected official, someone in a lot of small towns, they were the mayor for 50 years. They just kept getting reelected because they were the mayor and nobody ever ran against them. And that didn't necessarily mean they represented the town or all the people in the town, but they were the mayor, And I remember having a conversation with one mayor. I won't identify the town, but it was like 30% white in the town, and the mayor had been this white woman for like 40 something years. The fact that it was a woman was actually fairly progressive for that area, but the fact that the community had totally changed demographically, and yet it was the same leadership that they had 40 years ago, and she was still sort of governing as if the town was the same as it was 40 years ago. And it wasn't until the whole community got together and actually started having town halls and things. We were working with, there was arsenic in the water, and a quote I will never forget, they said, "It tastes better with arsenic in the water," which I can't imagine is true, but also don't drink water with arsenic in it. But it was just sort of this attitude of like, we want things to be the way they always were. And until the community sort of came together, and really through a lot of digital space, sort of people started talking about like, no, we don't want it to be the way it's always been. We want to be able to trust the drinking water coming out of our taps. This is really important to us. We don't want to have to go to Costco and buy $150 worth of bottled water every 2 weeks. We want to be able to drink the water in our homes. And it was really, I think, that connection online that really enabled folks to sort of move forward as a community, connect as a community, move forward as a community. So I think that's a critical piece. I think for folks working in nonprofits like RCAC, it's so important for us to be able to make data-driven decisions and really understand, because often we are having to choose, how do we allocate limited resources? I mean, fundamentally, that's a question we get forced into all the time. And so the question is, what information is going to help us make a good decision? And knowing that we will never have perfect information, but leveraging technology to give us good information to make good decisions, I think is critical for us as an organization and for other organizations working in communities, because our funds are not infinite and the challenges are great, and we have to prioritize. And so having good information allows us to prioritize those resources where they're going to have the biggest impact.
Okay, let's do a little round of quick questions, rapid fire questions. I told you we would be doing this. This is 10 questions.
I'm not a short talker, so
that's okay. We have plenty of time. All right. So fill in the blank for me. Gratitude is
everything.
That was short and to the point. Absolutely. Okay. Let's keep going. What is something that people often get wrong about you?
That's a good question. I think I'm scarier than I am. A lot of people say that I'm intimidating. I don't get it. I try not to be, but I think a lot of people think that.
Okay. Are you team coffee or team tea?
Definitely coffee. Okay. I don't function until I've had at least a cup.
We definitely have a strong contingent on both teams at Threshold, but the coffee team is very vocal. Let's see. Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Salty. Okay. How about, what is the last book you read and loved?
Ooh, that's an excellent question. The last book I read and loved. There is a book, it's nonfiction. It's called, it's on my reading list back there. The Fight to Save the Town, which I know is a very work-related answer, but it was it was a Stanford researcher deep diving into like 4 towns in the U.S. about sort of the different ways they've handled sort of severe financial stress and what they've done in their communities and how they've sort of come together as a community to save their towns. A really interesting book. Again, nonfiction.
Save the town.
I really enjoy it. Yeah, The Fight to Save the Town.
All right. Either your first concert or a concert you'll never forget.
Ooh, the the concert I'll never forget. So shortly before we left DC, Buena Vista Social Club was doing their last tour in the U.S., and my wife and I went to their concert at Wolf Trap, which is this cool outdoor venue near DC. And we had an absolute ball. It was one of our first dates after having kids, so it was just one of those like, we finally get to be adults again and go out and a night I'll never forget.
Excellent. And you made Zayeda and Bea dance. They were so excited about Buena Vista Social Club, right? Let's see.
That's my father's favorite.
What's your favorite meal, Ari?
This is a point of contention because I only get to eat it one night a year. It's corned beef and cabbage. My wife hates the smell, but I absolutely love it. And so I get to make it on St. Patrick's Day, and that's it.
Patrick's Day. Great. What is on your desk?
Oh, everything. I have such a messy desk. That's why I love that the camera's up here. I've got notebooks, papers, half of my lunch. It's a mess. So don't look down.
Excellent. They tried to do a feature on thresholders and their desks, and I think I'm the reason they decided not to do it. The picture I sent in, they were like, we can't show that to anyone. Okay. Let's see. What are my last couple of questions? Give us a story, a snapshot of an ordinary moment in your life that gives you true joy or brought you true joy.
Gosh. Well, I can even just talk to like this weekend. So we had one of those weekends where all of our kids' friends had birthday parties. And so we went from like one trampoline bounce house thing to another trampoline bounce house thing. But watching my middle child, actually, the birthday party he went to, there were only two, like he and one other friend of the birthday kid who came. And, of course, the other parent and I were like, oh my gosh, are they still going to have fun, even though it's such a small group, whatever. But the three of them just had a blast and ran around that trampoline park like they owned the place. And just seeing the sort of unbridled joy in your kids is just really, I don't know, that's what keeps me going through a lot of the hard times. And it was just really, really fun to see that.
So you have three, and their ages are
11, 7, and 4.
Okay. 2 boys and a girl?
2 boys and a girl. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That was just trivia. Tell me something you are really grateful for right now.
I am really grateful for the opportunity to wake up and go to work every day for something that I believe is making a difference in people's lives. It would be hard some days. It's hard enough to get out of bed some days, but it would be really hard if I didn't believe that the things we were doing were really making a difference for people.
I think that on some level, that's the unofficial definition of a thresholder. Somebody who gets up every day to go do something they think makes a difference in people's lives. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to open it up and see if any of my colleagues have any questions. I know I'm running a little fast here, but I'm sure that there are people who want to talk to you here.
See, I'm intimidating.
Yeah, there's that. Bea has a question. Go ahead, Bea.
Ari, thank you so much for all the specific stories that you've shared. I am shook at the Mississippi 73-year-old lady story. And I wonder, it took 12 years to help her become a modern woman. And I wonder if we were to approach that same project today, if it will still take 12 years to do all the things that needed to be done for her and the community that she was a part of.
That's a great question. See, the part that takes the longest time is lining up the money. Once we have the money, it goes fast. So, I think what we saw with like the investment from like the infrastructure bill and other things, a lot of projects that have been sitting for a long time were able to move fast. I think right now the big question is, could the financing line up that fast? And if so, I think, yeah, we could move fast. But if the financing doesn't line up, it might be another one of those. We have quite a few of those 7, 10, 12-year projects that eventually we can pull all the pieces together. So hard to say, but I do think right at this moment, there's enough money in the system that, yeah, we could probably do it faster, but we'd have to move.
Carmen is our new Chief Operating Officer, and it seems that she has a question.
Yep. Nice to meet you, Ari. Super grateful that you're here. I'm happy to meet you because we've been celebrating all your team lately and all the achievements you've made. So happy to match a face to all the great things the organization's doing. You're not intimidating. You're lovely. So, and I do get that I get the same thing. So I see what you're saying. Sometimes people tell me the same thing. I was wondering, I mean, I love the stories you made, just like Bea, they're inspirational and motivational. I'm wondering, are there any stories where you weren't able to make the difference you did and you weren't able to surpass the challenges that come, with doing this type of work? And how did you and the team manage that, or how do you react to that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we like to say it hasn't happened yet. In those kind of projects, there's one that comes to mind in Arizona where it's, these 3 towns are all surrounding a copper mine that went out of business, and everyone worked in the mines. And now the towns are trying to figure out, what does our future look like? And they really badly need a new sewer system, but everyone's concerned about investing a whole bunch of money in a town where the jobs aren't there, and is everyone going to leave? And we got within about $1 million of having the money we needed in order to build a new sewer there. We're still looking for that last $1 million. And so again, it's a project that has not moved forward, but we're sort of sitting there in this, it hasn't moved forward yet standpoint. And that's the approach I like to take with my team of, there will be obstacles and we won't always be able to solve stuff on our first try, but that doesn't mean we won't solve it on the second or the third. And I think it's important for these communities because a lot of them have been given up on, like these towns feel like they were given up on by the mining company that left. And they feel like they were given up on by the state of Arizona, who's refusing to invest in their sewer system. And we don't want to add to that by being the ones that also gave up on them. And so instead we're communicating to them that, no, we're in this for the long haul. We haven't figured it out yet, but we're going to stay here with you, and hopefully we will find a way to do it at some point in the future. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be in 2 years, maybe it's in 12 years, but we will work with you to find that solution.
Thank you. That's a great attitude to emulate.
You're muted, Shannon.
Totally talking to myself. Jess McCutcheon, one of our project managers, has a question.
Yeah, I have probably a pretty low stakes question. I also grew up in a rural agricultural town in north central Montana. We lived in a dry cabin for quite a while. In my upbringing, we would haul water from a municipal water source once we finally had a cistern running. So it's cool to see this work being carried out in those rural communities that really don't have access to infrastructure. And I appreciate that. But I was just wondering where in Idaho, because I'm pretty familiar with the little towns in northern Idaho.
Yeah, it's a town called Genesee. It's between Moscow, where the University of Idaho is, and Lewiston, which is where Lewis Clark State College is. So those are the cities to me, and they're both towns of 20,000. So we were sandwiched in between.
Sure. I have a lot of family that lives in and around Lewiston, and yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we're just up the hill from Lewiston.
Okay. Got it.
Just up the hill. Anybody else with questions?
Hey, Ari. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for hanging out with the crew today. I have 2 questions. The first one is work related, and the second one is personal. The first one is when you think about one of the strategic pillars and the goals around the organization, which is this term, or a phrase rather, which is culturally appropriate access to resources. I'd love to hear a little bit about how the organization thinks about that, and you in particular, because wouldn't surprise me at all if you personally were behind those words. And then the second question is, who's your favorite thresholder from your team?
Oh, that's not a fair one.
And you only have to answer one question. So.
Well, I don't see Adam on here, so he's off the list. Yeah, so culturally appropriate access to resources. This can be interpreted a lot of ways. To me, what it really means is it's not enough to just throw money at a problem or throw resources at a problem. If you don't sort of do the groundwork to make sure that the investment is going to be successful before you make the investment, you're kind of just throwing money at the problem. And so what we really work to do is prepare communities to be ready to receive the money. So, for example, if you get a federal grant and you're not prepared to do all the paperwork and the auditing and all the other stuff that goes with the federal grant, you're still not going to get a water system built. And similarly, you know, whether it's philanthropic, like anytime you're getting money from someone else, it comes with strings. And I think I understand often why the funders are putting those strings on, but those strings can be the deal breaker for a community where they're not able to access that. And so by culturally appropriate, I mean, like in indigenous communities where we work, you know, there is a certain attitude about, and it's different in every community, but there are certain attitudes, traditional beliefs around property ownership, around, you know, what is community? Like even defining who the community is can be, you know, a really tricky subject for a lot of the places we work. And so, if a funder is just coming in and saying, well, here's $1 million to build a water system, that doesn't necessarily result in a water system if we don't also address those sort of the making sure that the funding matches the culture of the community. And similarly, we work in a lot of places that are like, well, we will never take a red cent from the federal government. We are anti-government. We don't want anything to do with government. But if you can get a 0% loan from the United States Department of Agriculture or a 6% loan from JP Morgan Chase, all of a sudden that extra $50 a month everyone's paying on their water bill doesn't sound so appealing. And but again, it's part of our job. We view it as our job to be that bridge of sort of how do we match up the funding. It's not always funding. There are other resources we bring to communities, but making sure that we're finding a way that resource can match up with the community's culture, so that it ends up being a successful project instead of just sort of an attempt to throw money or other resources at a problem that ends up not being successful.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I heard you talking last week, Ari, about, and it was fascinating to me. I think the example that you used was that there was a community, or there could be a community that had arsenic in their water. And you dig into that a little bit and you find out that they haven't done the right studies. And they haven't done the right studies because they're not keeping the right paperwork. And they're not keeping the right paperwork because they're not having the right meetings. And that RCAC goes through all of those steps and works with the community, not just to get the arsenic out of the water, but to dig into revamping everything that they need to be able to do to address that problem. I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, we try to get to the root cause. So again, a lot of times, right, there's federal rules and laws, state laws about Safe Drinking Water Act, Clean Water Act, and if a community is not in compliance with those, sometimes it's a technical problem. They didn't add enough chlorine, and you can add chlorine, and that's great. But often, the reason they didn't add the chlorine is because they didn't have enough money to buy the chlorine. And why didn't they have enough money to buy the chlorine? They, you know, to your point of there's all these steps that sort of lead to it. And if we don't address that root, we're just going to be right back there 2 years from now with them not having enough chlorine to add to the water to address the contamination. And so we really like to sort of take the long view of let's get you back into compliance in the short run, but let's also address those root causes that are going to lead to a sustainable outcome for the community.
Any other questions? We're at about 4:45.
Yes, I have one last one. You mentioned that when you were working on the database project, that you felt far away from the actual work that you were doing. And I would love for you to offer some words of wisdom or encouragement to us as technology implementers, builders, creators, where it might feel sometimes that we're so far away from the actual work that's being done on the ground work. What is the CRM going to do for RCAC? Like, what is the impact that we're going to potentially be able to see and have in the way that you approach work, so that we can also feel that we're right there with you doing the work, even though we're not in the communities having the conversations about, do you even have the right paperwork to receive the money?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say open invitation. You should come visit one of the communities we work in. Seeing is believing, I guess. And I think that's, for me, that's really important. But I think too, you know, as I think about the CRM and what it's going to mean for us, is like every dollar, every staff hour, every resource we have to put into data management is an hour less of someone being out in the community. And right now, I don't know how many of you have seen the map of our existing data infrastructure, but it's like 42 separate data systems. I mean, it's it's all over the map. And that means a lot of inefficiency and a lot of time spent by people who are really good at helping communities. It's their time spent, trying to remember what system something goes into, and then, oh shoot, what's my password? And now I have to reset my password because I haven't logged into that system for 3 months. And oh, is that Excel thing on OneDrive or is that in Google Docs? And it's just sort of a lot of time for the people who are best at doing that community work is spent on navigating our own systems. And by having a single place for them to go, we will, I think, and we anticipate seeing a lot more efficiency for them to free up their time to go do the stuff they're really good at. Right. So that it doesn't become every Friday I have to just set aside the whole day and do all my data entry. Instead, it's cool. I'm going to spend an extra half day in the community helping them with that other challenge so that, because I know I can go back to the office and only spend a couple hours doing my data entry instead of 8 hours. And so I think that's where I see the huge opportunity for us. The other piece is, we have different programs. I run the water and sewer programs. We also have housing, we have economic development, we have lending. And often a community needs all those things. And so being able to sort of communicate through the system to our other teams that like, hey, this community also has housing needs. And then they can see all the work that's already been done on the water side, for example, I think is going to allow us to better serve the communities. So, how will you all see that? Again, I think part of that is coming. It's a great opportunity and also great economic development for our communities, for you all to come and spend a weekend and spend your money in town. But it's also, I think, just being able to know that your work is contributing significantly to our efficiency will really free up the folks that we have doing work in the community to do more of the good work they do.
Awesome.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, if you're ever in Sacramento, give me a call.
You'll find a community for us to visit. I was amused last week. We were talking about different communities, and a family by name was mentioned. The level of help that you provide goes down to a specific family that everybody in the company knows. This family, we're working with them on this and that and this and that. So
it's been 30 years and that family still doesn't have drinking water in their home. So we're getting there. Another year or so, and I think they will. But
not there yet.
Not there yet.
Okay. Anybody else have a question or anything you want to... Oh, Carmen?
Just a quick thing to say. You may not have a favorite thresholder, Ari, but as the new girl in town, I ask a lot of questions, and the thresholders really love working with RCAC. They speak the world of you and your team, and all of them had said so. So I appreciate the opportunity to work with you, and I appreciate that you make them feel as a part of the family of RCAC.
Oh, yeah. We could not be happier. We really have enjoyed our partnership with you all. I like to give Adam grief because he's not here, but you've all been wonderful to work with, and could not be happier with how things are going so far. I know we're not always easy to work with, but we're getting through some of the harder teams and making good progress. So it's been
Darcy does a really good job protecting us. So
yeah, Darcy.
Yeah.
Darcy works for me. She's the project manager on this. She is if she wasn't here, I don't know what we'd be doing.
Right. Well, with that, unless there's anything else you want to share or say, Ari.
Well, thank you again. I'm not just for this opportunity, but for believing in our work and for helping support us. I had very high hopes coming into this, and you have absolutely met them, and I think we're in line to exceed them as we move forward with the project. So. Thank you. And thank you for all the work you all do for so many other organizations working in mission-driven fields. It's really, really important that we as a nonprofit sector figure out this whole technology thing, because it allows our field folks, again, to focus on that mission work, which I think is really critical.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to us today and inspire us. We know how busy you are and how much you have to do. So really, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks,
My
Ari.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ari.
Thanks.
See you
See you
soon.
soon.